Navigating a toxic work environment often feels like a study in survival. You watch the corporate narcissist gaslight colleagues and systematically steal credit, using psychological manipulation to climb the ladder, while leaving a trail of high turnover and drained productivity in their wake. To make sense of this, many turn to the concept of the shadow. Carl Jung proposed that every human harbors an unconscious reservoir of dark, primal impulses, the parts of ourselves we repress and hide from society, yet which deeply define our identities. Philosophers like Arthur Schopenhauer took this further, arguing that social life is essentially warfare. He viewed humans as driven by a will that is inherently selfish and deceptive, suggesting that to survive, one must view every interaction with a degree of Machiavellian clarity. Modern authors have codified these ideas into a series of laws. Robert Greene's work suggests that because the human race is innately irrational, we must constantly play a defensive strategy, reading people like psychologists to avoid being crushed by their hidden motivations. This dark nature framework provides an immediate, validating vocabulary for our professional pain. However, modern behavioral science suggests that the idea of a fixed, inevitable human nature misses a far more dynamic reality. A central pillar of this cynical worldview is the assertion that our genetics are solely wired for self-interest and grandiosity. Evolutionary biology tells a different story. Richard Dawkins' research into genetic survival shows that a species requires a complex equilibrium to endure. A population needs a mixture of both selfish and altruistic traits to maintain a stable environment. Early hominids relied on this cooperative balance to survive. In harsh prehistoric environments, pure self-absorption was a liability that could lead to isolation and death. We see the proof of this in the evolutionary record. Homo sapiens outlasted the Neanderthals, largely because we developed highly adapted, cooperative social structures. Our ability to work as a collective unit was a more powerful survival tool than pure individual aggression. Empathy and cooperation are just as deeply embedded in our biological history as selfishness. From an evolutionary standpoint, total self-absorption is an adapted dead end. Another common assumption is that humans naturally overestimate their own abilities, a concept popularly known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. While this idea has become a staple of social media, recent statistically rigorous studies have failed to reproduce the Dunning-Kruger effect. When subjected to modern analysis, the law of universal human grandiosity dissolves into a randomized scatterplot without statistical significance. This pattern of debunking extends to our understanding of aggression and manipulation as innate biological imperatives. In the 1960s, Albert Bandura's Bobo doll experiment showed that children who observed adults acting violently toward a toy quickly imitated that behavior. This revealed that aggression is a trait heavily learned from environmental observation. In the corporate world, toxic managers are executing learned behaviors that competitive industries actively reward. Their actions are a reflection of an environment that values short-term wins and aggressive self-promotion over team stability. Moving away from the idea of a biological curse allows us to see aggression for what it is, a structural flaw in an environment that can be identified and systematically corrected. The modern neuroscientific consensus has moved past the divide of nature versus nurture. Instead, researchers focus on the behavioral continuum. This diagram shows the dynamic, real-time feedback loop that govern our actions. Our behavior is a constant interaction between our environment, our biology, and our epigenetics, the way our genes are expressed in response to the world around us. We can use this understanding to protect ourselves. The gray rock method involves intentionally flatlining your responses to a narcissist, making yourself as uninteresting as a gray rock. This tactic locks down the environment node, starving a toxic person's learned behavior of the dramatic reaction it requires to sustain itself. Rejecting the myth of an unchangeable dark human nature allows us to reclaim our agency. We possess the scientific power to rewrite our environments, shape behavior, and move beyond the constraints of a Jungian shadow.